Imagine a day where children are guided and nurtured in a way that honors their unique humanness. A day where, instead of being expected to change in order to fit in, children can be met right where they're at. Welcome to Where They're Planted, a podcast for parents and care providers of unique children. Caring for a child with a developmental, emotional, or behavior challenge, a neurodiverse brain, or difficult early life experiences can be confusing and exhausting. On this podcast, we'll help your child flourish and strengthen their roots by helping you not only understand them, but also gain the skills to help them bloom where they're planted. We'll use brain science, nervous system tools, collaborative strategy sessions, and a deep understanding of the developmental process to create a fertile environment around your child in order to nurture their growth. I am your host, Jen Bluske, an occupational therapist with over 25 years of experience and a parent coach. My most closely held title, however, is that of a single mom of 2 thriving adopted kids, so I have walked this walk. I am truly excited to share, teach, and dive into these important topics on each episode. Welcome back to Where They're Planted. In this episode, we are going to start by digging into the foundations of development and the parent-child relationship with a conversation about nervous system development and the idea of regulation. We are going to talk about skills, strategies, and the concept of what co-regulation is. This is one of the most foundational things you can do as a parent to shift and change your nervous system and help our children learn to stay calm, engaged, and active participants in their world. Spoiler alert, in today's episode, we likely won't be offering anything that we want you to ask your child to do, but more so, reflections and actions on your responses to your child in the moment. With me today is Shannon Stuckey, my colleague and one of my favorite humans in this work as we work to understand and support families on their path to effective co-regulation. Shannon has supported children and families for over a decade as an occupational therapist and parent coach. She specializes in collaborating with families to develop a better understanding of their child's behavior and abilities. She incorporates individualized intervention techniques designed to uncover and promote change at the root level. Shannon has such an extensive training, some of which is in sensory processing, emotional regulation, and relationships. She holds certificates in DIR floor time, kinetic bridging, rhythmic movement training, craniosacral therapy, therapeutic listening, and astronaut training. Within her therapy sessions, Shannon cultivates a space where authentic connection can thrive, both for children as well as parents and caregivers. She incorporates creativity in her sessions and is a true believer in the power of play. Shannon, we're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I wanted to start by setting the stage for co-regulation by just giving the families a definition of what, as occupational therapists, what we mean by regulation.
Yeah, it's a very basic concept, but there's so many layers to it. So I feel like when I'm supporting families around regulation, I'm looking at, can the child, can the parent come into the room, come into the world, come into whatever environment they're in, and can they make sense of it? Can they be able to understand, and we could kind of peel back each system, but on a more general level, is do they feel safe within themselves of where their body is? And do they feel safe kind of with their surroundings and not bombarded, trying too hard to make sense of something so that we could get to that next level of, hey, I want to be with you. So there's so much going on at just this foundational level that I love just geeking out and supporting parents at this piece to be able to see like just the big ticket items of how their kid is just making sense of their world and how are they doing or how hard are they working to make sense of their world, because there's a lot of hidden things here that an OT just kind of will put those detective goggles on and just be inquisitive about, okay, how is that little one making sense of their world and processing and understanding it?
You know, and when I think about making sense of the world, I think it might be important to speak to how regulation, in a nutshell, develops how a baby makes sense of their world is going to look a whole lot different from how, let's say, a teenager is making sense of the world. And so there's this trajectory that happens, or this development that happens along the way as kids learn how to regulate. What are the nuts and bolts of how kids sort of develop into their regulation?
I have a little 10-month-old right now, so I'm like witnessing this just all unfold right in front of me. But, as newborns, the world is quite close to them, and they're so integrated with their caregiver because the caregiver is just such an extension of who they are, like on a cellular level. So slowly, as I see in my little 10-month-old, I see their world start to expand. So I like to kind of think of it as like just their circle is starting to expand outside of themselves. And simultaneously, they're also understanding what's happening within themselves. So it's kind of like we've got these monitors internally, and then we've got these radars externally that we're all trying to make sense of. And this is getting ahead a little bit to co-regulation, but it just happens all at once, is the ability that the adult, the caregiver, is the anchor, the safety net for that child to continue to explore and go out in the world to make sense of it. And then we'll return to come check back in.
That's such a lovely way to explain it. You brought up co-regulation. It's so foundational to what we do in every single interaction within our days as occupational therapists. Let's just take a second to really think through and define it at a basic level.
I think this is constantly happening with your exchanges, with your engagements, whether this be a colleague or, here we're talking about just that caregiver and child relationship and dynamic, but we're constantly feeding off of one another's energy. So this is kind of like the unspoken thing that's existing, that's bouncing back and forth of two people constantly. So, for example, if a child falls down and hurts their knee, a lot of times you'll notice they'll kind of look to the parent to see, am I okay? What just happened? And there's a lot of opportunities we could take, right? Like everything in life, but especially parenting. There's so many different paths you could take. But in a co-regulation model, we would want to support the child by really helping them understand what just happened to them. Yes, the assurance will come, right? It's knee-jerk as parents, I think, to give that assurance quite quickly. And I'm here to really support parents to first really try and support the child to understand what their little system just witnessed, just experienced on an internal level. So yes, they might be okay, but we have the opportunity here to have this little space of sharing this really vulnerable moment with them that felt big.
Yeah.
And so co-regulation is this reflection of their internal state to support them to process. So this could look like a number of ways. I think it's in the nuance and the art, and it's so individual. And this is where I constantly am just trying to support my families to first understand this concept, what it is, but then to personalize it so it comes across as really authentic to them. Because if it's felt within them and if it's genuine, then you're really going to be able to co-regulate the child. Let's walk through that example. So the child falls down and bumps their knee. You bend down with them and you reflect, ooh, ah. So I'm just kind of constantly scanning, okay, what was that like for that person? What was that like for that little girl? And trying to reflect that. And that reflection is a validation. It's a witnessing of. It's a showing I see you, I hear you. And that helps them make sense of, oh, that's what just happened to me. And that validation, that witnessing, I think supports their regulation in general.
It's so lovely. It supports their regulation in general and their understanding of their own sense of safety. And, it's interesting in that example that you used, Shannon, where the child gets hurt and then the parent has this response. Even before that, there's these physiological things that happen for a parent, right? We've all been here where we've watched our child fall. And some of the time we might get really dysregulated ourselves because our child might be very hurt, or we might be really worried that they're going to cry a long time. And so let's talk about that parent experience. Co-regulation you've described as this dance. It's the child and the parent. Where's that parent's experience in the dance of co-regulation. How does that impact their ability to reflect?
It's so vital. I mean, we've all been around people and noticed kind of like our system feels good around this person, or maybe it's a little disorganized and a little irritating to our nervous system. So it's similar. It's like I like to think of as, yes, we have this outline, these boundaries, but there's a lot that's happening in between. For example, another option, maybe it's not even an option though. Maybe because there's true fear going on with a parent witnessing their child scraping their knee, they might get to a state of dysregulation themselves of fear, 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 fear. Oh my gosh, are you okay? Panic, panic, panic. Rightfully so, a lot of times, right? Because you're the one in charge of keeping this child safe and happy in this world, so to speak. But now what's happening with the child, if we're really breaking it down, now the child's outside of themselves because actually there's a lot of things going on. Like internally, alarms are going. What just happened? That feels big. And then externally, they're getting another layer of not their own stuff to process. That's not helping them to internalize and really make sense of what happened with them.
Well, and is it not impacting their own nervous system?
100%.
Right. So that is co-regulation. Your nervous system will always inherently impact mine, and mine will always inherently impact yours.
I mean, I'm living and breathing it right now as my little baby, as he cries, we just, are working with the sleep, right? Everything in my world is sleep right now. But yeah, I mean, like I am getting the crash course on how my nervous system works and what my triggers are. And I live and breathe this work. And also I'm human. So like mom rage is real, noise overwhelm is so real. And so I'm trying to figure out alongside the parents that I'm supporting how this actually can be put into play, because it's one thing to cognitively know and hold on to this information. And it's another thing to really look internally at yourself to better understand how your nervous system works. And I personally love to think of it as a nervous system because it's not a choice we have of how we process the world. And it doesn't make it as personalized. So it helps to really, I think, just stage 1 through maybe 10 to really get curious first about yourself.
We've set the stage for co-regulation and how our nervous systems as parents and providers and caregivers inherently impact those of our children, which is information, but as we continue to talk is also strategy, right? It's how we support our kids. I want to think about our older kids for a second. As infants, the adult in the world is sort of managing the world for them. They're managing the world for them from a regulation perspective. Baby cries, parent steps in and takes care of whatever the situation is that's creating the discomfort in the infant, which teaches the infant, oh yeah, I'm safe. Oh yeah, that rumbling in my belly is gone, even though they don't sort of cognitively think that. That's kind of the physiological work that's happening in infancy. And then we have our 2, 3, 4-year-olds who are inherently at a different regulatory state. Let's just take a second to talk about what that looks like from a parent-child co-regulation perspective.
100%. Having this understanding of baseline nervous system is so important, but then we need to layer it on top of development. Because here at this stage, it's like, no, mama, I could do it by myself. And it's so necessary for them to have this stage. So better understanding developmentally where that bar is for our children to support where should they be is so vital to help us maybe tolerate those toddler years and the storm of emotional dysregulation so that we expect it. And we know that maybe there's nothing to change here or there's nothing wrong here. Boy, oh boy, is this hard. But knowing that it's a beautiful, beautiful development, what your toddler is going through of saying no. And, honestly, it comes back around developmentally in those teenage years.
Sure does.
Which, Jen, you could speak to more specifically, but and then you sprinkle the hormones, right? I think, having this a little bit more understanding of regulation and just developmentally where they might be is so necessary. be able to meet these kids where they need to be met.
And for our toddlers, right? Let's talk about our toddlers. And then, as you so eloquently said, our teenagers who kind of go back through the toddler phase to some extent. Our toddlers are trying to find that autonomy and they are living their emotions. They are living their emotions. And so from a co-regulation perspective, the parent isn't having to step in and do every minute task anymore for them like they are infants. And toddlers are not yet able to regulate themselves, meaning keep themselves organized for any given situation. Try taking a toddler to a restaurant and asking them to be still and quiet and not throw their food. They need a lot of parent co-regulation support in order to maintain in those moments. And they're sort of trying to find their autonomy and learning to do it a little bit themselves. They might go create a cozy book corner for themselves in an attempt to try to learn how to kind of get regulated. I want to talk a little bit about, as we talk about co-regulation, one thing that pops up for families that I work with all the time is I need them to be able to regulate themselves and calm themselves down. Let's talk a little bit about how that comes online.
Yeah.
When that comes online for children, so that we can then circle back to talking about this co-regulation stuff with parents and when that transitions.
I think there is a lot of pressure, especially out in public and in schools, to have that kid that obeys and listens. And we're all trying to raise polite, kind, loving individuals in this world. I think that's everyone's ultimate goal. And I also think there's a steep learning curve for when the neurology is available for that child to actually self-regulate, because they still need us so much. And it's a lot because it is a lot. And it's hard because it is hard. So it's like I'm living in the muck with my parents because there's not this magic solution. And I shouldn't expect a toddler or a 5-year-old or even a 7-year-old fully to be able to self-regulate. I mean, we're seeing that, around that age, it starts to strengthen around 6, 7, 8. However, when we look at the neuroscience, like the data is out, and that prefrontal brain that is responsible for emotional regulation and the ability to plan and execute these strategies that they might know, quote unquote, of breathing, maybe taking a little sip of water, having a snack, all these beautiful top-down strategies that we support our kids with, that's not really online until like in our early 30s, to be honest. So
that number always floors me.
Me too. That's why I'm laughing, because I'm 40 and I still can't stop myself a lot when I'm in traffic. I know all the things to do, but that rage can come up sometimes, and I know all this stuff. So what's happening is so beautiful. And I think it resonates so deeply with me right now because I do have a little one that I feel I have such an influence over him right now. And my other daughter's 3.5. But if I am regulated and I genuinely can get my child into, for the 10-month-old, it's holding, right? It's more body on body because I can't cognitively talk to him so much. With my 3.5-year-old, it might be more resonating with her emotions because she lives and breathes in her emotional centers right now. Getting some clicks around that. If I bring her down, not distract her, not just give in and give her what she wanted, but if I go through it with her and recognize her, mirror her, hold the space for her, maybe I'm not doing anything. If I allow that magic bubble of co-regulation to exist, I'm actually strengthening the regulatory routes, because it's not one area of the brain, to get practice. It's like I'm highlighted on the roadmap. Ooh, this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like in a healthy way in the brain. And I do it again. Because they're going to always give me another opportunity because they're babies and toddlers and kids. So there's always going to be something that dysregulates them. A visual that helps me sometimes is those cabinet doors that you push in to pop out. We got to go into it with them and feel it with them in order for them to come out of it in a healthy way.
Oh, you just said that so beautifully when you said creating that bubble around our child where they know they're safe. and they can experience their experience. And then you used a couple of words that are just some lovely strategies that I want to highlight. You used mirroring. You used holding space. Let's expand on those in this idea of co-regulation. What is mirroring and holding space when we're trying to co-regulate with our kids?
Sometimes it helps me to use my adult brain of how it feels like for me. But say I had like a really intense day and it started crappy because I missed my alarm and then I spilled my coffee. And it was kind of one of those days, right? And I go home and I'm offloading all of this to my husband, to my partner. What I really want is I want him to listen to me. I want him to be a witness. And even I want him to feel with me a little bit like, ooh, why? Oh, then the coffee fell on your lap. No, like, why? I want a reflection. I want to witness to my experiences, to my emotions. I don't want a problem solver. Like, Shannon, maybe you should set your alarm like twice or something, honey. Or no, that just created disconnection. I want you to go into it with me. I want to be seen. I want you to feel this with me in order to pop back out. And typically, if I have that person to witness, just to hold the space for me, I feel a lot lighter. And this is the exact same concept that's happening with our children again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And it's a lot. And I think another really important thing to highlight when we talk about co-regulation and we talk about these big behaviors is we're always going to be going inward to further understand what this is like for us to witness our child go through it. Because a lot of times we want to take that big extinguisher and just like blast that away, stop it, eliminate it. But here I'm saying, no, wow, you actually have the opportunity to help your child feel a range of emotions, feel a range of sensations, and say that, yes, this is uncomfortable, but this is okay.
But we're safe.
But we're safe.
But we're safe. Yeah, such important concepts. You know, if you're a parent, you have experienced this. You have experienced these moments with your kiddos. And so as parents, maybe this is the first time they've heard the word co-regulation or just really sort of thinking through how they respond to their kiddo. We will be spending quite a bit of time talking about what the parents' response is and how we can support our own nervous systems as parents, because what you're alluding to is this is a lot about what we're able to hold and what we're able to sit with our kiddos. As parents walk away from this today, is there a nugget that we can give parents as they start to explore with this idea?
I think just being gentle with ourselves is such a rare thing. I would say give yourself grace and allow curiosity to come in, to just play around with maybe just what feels good to you when you're in a state of dysregulation. What are you noticing? And just start there. I mean, you're here, you're listening to this, so you're curious. So I think that we don't have to know all the answers. And I think we have to expect this parenting journey to be really, really messy. And I'm just starting off. So Jen, you could give me a lot of guidance of what's to come. So I think just, being gentle on ourselves, that you're showing up and just starting to get curious, because that curiosity is going to expand into something. And maybe we start with ourselves to just notice what we experience. And more than anything, oh, that felt really good to talk to a friend, or I don't know, start personalizing it within your system first before we could translate it to our kids.
I love that. Be curious and keep showing up and give yourself some grace and gentleness.
And grab a snack.
And have good food. Well, thank you so much. We will be talking so much more about this topic. Thank you, Shannon, for coming on, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Where They're Planted is a Lit Path Studios podcast and is produced by Jamie Gale and Jen Bluske. Music is by Gaston Reen and Pod 5. Thank you for loving your child right where they're planted.